let me start with this small introduction, which is a sort of a metaphor for what we're trying to reach here. A lot of you participating in this call will have massive SAP landscapes, and they're very important. To a degree, you could say they're a perishable good in the sense that they need to be taken care of. In some cases, they need to be cooled, but also it's massive. It has been built over years. It represents a lot of investment. And a lot of you are asking the question, should I leave it as it is, or should I move to S4HANA? And should I then move with the whole of my container, all of my instances, or should I be selective? Could I use SAP's own tools? And because the other side of the coin is that increasingly there is pressure on you as a technology delivery specialist or a CIO to deliver faster. And that's what the Lotus more or less illustrates, to deliver tailor-made to certain audiences or users. And so this dilemma between the big thing in the back that is vital for business continuity and the small, fast thing in the front, to keep the balance between those two worlds, that is actually what this webcast will be diving into. And the whole premise there is obviously that now is the moment to decide what your future ERP landscape should look like. Should it be a traditional lift and shift of what you already have, or should it be much more of a clean and lean version in the ERP side and a local platform such as OutSystems on top of it? And that is what we will be discussing during this webcast today.
So I think many folks in the room are aware of what low code, no code, right, is, but it's really around automation of software delivery, right? It's still one of the most laborious, activities that is being done within not only technology, but across the board in many industries. So when you look at OutSystems as a full stack development platform, it's really looking at kind of all the way from the front end to back end that can be delivered via sort of a composable architecture and setup. The key part to understand here as well, not just the full stack capabilities from the experience layer down to the data layer, but really the integration and extensibility of the platform. That's really what we'll talk about today around leveraging existing investments in specific with SAP of how do you drive integration automation across the enterprise through that integration and extensibility of the platform, but also incorporating full lifecycle management. This is crucial, right? Because it's not just about getting certain applications up and running and into production, but it's also about maintaining those, developing those, and scaling those effectively, and really creating that flywheel effect. So how do you drive throughput, scale, stability, security, and then everything is around experience, right? So as I mentioned earlier, the spend around experiences, be it employee or consumer related, are crucial. And so more organizations are having to actually invest in this area, and our platform is a way to help integrate and extend your current investments and ultimately drive that experience, whether it's via web or mobile applications.
So when we look at the DevOps part of this full life cycle, obviously this is an operating model that is not across the board in a lot of companies. I mean, parts of the operating model are already in DevOps mode. So when you look at the OutSystems platform, does it allow you to distinguish in this space, or does it mean that you have to more or less shift all of your technology operating into the DevOps mode?
Yeah, it's a great question, Hans. So thank you for posting that. So the idea here is about agility. So it's flexible in respect to you can adopt our lifecycle management DevOps model, or you can use your own. But it's not the platform is not predicated on having that in place. Mm-hmm. The idea here is it's about how you accelerate through that lifecycle, right? So how do you establish more quality assurance around the code you develop? And how do you drive more, extending those capabilities beyond just core IT to drive scale and application development?
Yeah, and thus also preventing future technical debt.
That's correct.
Yeah. All right. And maybe it's good to say a few words about these characteristics below, because they are quite distinguishing for the OutSystems platform, right?
That's correct, Hans. Yeah, as I touched on a little bit earlier, and we'll get into it in Roy's section a bit further, but it's crucial to understand that the low-code market, the multi-experience platform market is quite saturated, right? So there's a lot of players, but I think what we pride ourselves on in looking at is the enterprise grade of the platform, right? So it's the classic case, and I'll touch on this earlier. It's not only about building it fast, but you have to build it right and for the future, to Hans' point, right? So security has to be ingrained along the way, scale, stability around volume, and the ability to manage high workloads, and then the flexibility of integrating with various systems, right? This is about coexistence. It's not about necessarily lift and shift.
Yeah, and the platform comes with 2,500 components, but I think it's fair to say that OutSystems has delivered and has been certified on connectivity through APIs and other means with the SAP platform for a long time, right?
That's correct, yes. And so as part of the Forge, there's a number of different APIs and integrations that we have, not only with SAP, but other systems. But yes, so certified and being used by many global enterprises across the country.
Where do you start with this journey, right? You have a big SAP landscape, and you ask yourself, what would be the first area where we could start? Let's just have a look at some of these elements here. So we've seen the demo. What would be the relevance for OutSystems in each of these domains, Roy?
Yeah, I think when you say where to start, is first you define what is my ERP core. So what I really need in the core. And if you go for that transformation, you want to have that surrounded by SaaS platforms, cloud-based solutions in this case. Yeah. So here, OutSystems can help in the re-platforming. So you carve out your current SAP system, what is not part of that core, and you rebuild that in OutSystems. Mm-hmm. And once you have those SaaS solutions in place, what you ideally want, and again, about that employee experience, you want to go for unified portals, perhaps, where as a buyer, you log in and you see all your open contracts you need to approve. You also see for your vendor the current status of goods receipts and invoices, but maybe also a ticket with commodity prices that you need for your negotiations for raw materials or whatever you need in the market. Yeah. That anything you need to do your daily work could be there. Mm-hmm. That you can also build in OutSystems. Mm-hmm. And then the next layer, if you will go for those SaaS solutions in the cloud to surround that core, but perhaps for your business case, there's not a SaaS solution in the market. And in that case, you can fill in those white spaces also with OutSystems. And last, everybody has to have localized or apps that are specific for one function or for one goal, or an app for your customers. And obviously OutSystems is ideal for that as well. And I think one of the main
includes different languages for different regions in the world and so forth, if you're an international firm, right?
Yeah, any ISO language is supported. But I think if you come back to what Louise said about the shortage of developers, you can do all this with one skill set. While in SAP or if you build this, you would have maybe 10 or 20 skill sets in .NET and C# in PTP, ABAP. So I think that's a main benefit there as well.
So if we go to applications, right, custom SaaS on top of the ERP core, it's nicely depicted here. Just walk us through some of the SAP components that could be an integrated part of such a stack.
Well, the funny thing, like you see, some here are already SAP components in the cloud. So SAP has always acquired quite some cloud companies. So SAP is also moving in that direction. So this really supports also the SAP strategy in that sense. Yeah. The thing what we want to do is then keep that S4HANA core as lean as possible, as close to the core, and go for SaaS solutions and then use them as good as they are. As good is good enough, and that some people have to change a bit to accommodate this. If you have to build a lot of custom code again, then you will get into the old situation again, also in the SaaS solutions that you have. So, and if you have anything, and that's why the top is, have a proper strategy, when to buy and when to build, and make that quantifiable. Like if you have to invest 20 or 30% of your license cost in development, maybe it is also a good time to start thinking about building, because that change will be the most costly effort you have. That custom work you have.
I think that's an interesting, the constant dilemma, right? Build versus buy. And I think the light bulb moment that we see that Roy, I think, is touching on a bit is preserving some of the foundational core systems in place, right? But then how do you actually manage and sustain custom application development, right? That is demanding now more to have the competitive advantage to drive the applications for your consumers and for your employees. Mm-hmm. And I think it's about this, again, the idea of the platform concept, which is a term that's can be overused, but in OutSystems, in this example, it's a bit of the orchestration, and it's a bit of that quality assurance and driving custom application development at scale.
There's a question from the audience which relates to a very straightforward question. Some of the SAP landscape capabilities like Fiori are powerful in themselves. Why would you need OutSystems? What is the difference?
Well, Fiori in itself is a lot of cases. It's just a master detail view of data. So you have a PO with a header, you have a PO item, and a lot of tabs also again in Fiori. So it's not really a user-friendly solution if you work with that every day. If you have to go from tab 1 to tab 5 to tab 20 to enter your data. Mm-hmm. There's no analytics data there that you might help you do your work. They're simple representations of SAP objects most of the time. Yeah. And they're there to replace the SAP GUI, the old style SAP screens. Yeah. But lots of screens do not fulfill the customer needs. They need to do rework there. And then it becomes, again, quite expensive. It's pretty hard to build a Fiori app and to maintain it, with quite some skills required. So again, if it works out of the box, by all means use a Fiori app. If you have to rebuild the Fiori app, then very close you come to a threshold that it's better to rebuild in OutSystems than it is to the changes in Fiori.